Welcome back, you guys, to the Peace and Grease podcast. And we absolutely love getting new guests in here and talking about their builds. And we're all about that hot rod culture and Midwest motors and just about anything with an engine in it. So I'm excited today because we have James Dahnert with us. So James, why don't you just start us off, give us the quick 30-second version of who you are, where you're from, and also remember to give us your cylinder index. Let me give a quick explanation of what cylinder index is. It is the total number of cylinders that you own. They do not need to be running or operating necessarily.
Oh, thank God.
Right? I know. So that means my number just doubled.
Right.
But cylinder index is all the cylinders that you own. That'd be, any engine, weed whackers, car, truck, motorcycle, snowmobiles, whatever you got. So
29, I'd say. So
okay.
A couple V8s and then a 4-cylinder, a 6-cylinder, this bad boy.
Yeah.
And then I've got a weed whacker that's a gas-powered weed whacker and my snowblower. So
well done.
I'm like, all right. Yeah. Plenty of gasoline in the garage. It's like my wife is always like, it stinks in there. And I'm like, well, I got to have gas for this stuff, man.
Love it. All right. So, James, start us off with who you are, where you're from, and what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a tattoo artist in Casson, Minnesota. And I was born in Camp Pendleton in California. My dad was a Marine. And so, and then I moved up here when I was probably like 14 or 15. I've lived in Minnesota ever since. I live in Casson. And I tinker and I tailor stuff and built motorcycles, hot rods, you name it. I get into anything that it has a motor and goes vroom down the road and I can get like a little sketchy with. And then like, other than that, man, I try to like, I don't know. I like building stuff. I like kind of tinkering around with things. If it is stock, I'm usually like, nah, we'll change that. Like, yeah.
Right on. I think you and I are cut from the same cloth. That's awesome.
I think most hot rod guys have like kind of a linear path of just like, hey man, you know what would be cooler with that? More.
That's right.
So
love it. Yeah. Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about the build that you brought us today.
Well, this is my 71 Shovelhead. It's a 71 frame that I got up in it was about 2 hours north of here. It's like past Denison. This guy had this like warehouse full of just like anything that you could want. He had a slab side shovel in it. He had the original 71 in it, but he wanted more than I had for it. And I was like, it'd be cool to grab it. But it was also a boat anchor. So I was like, I got up there and I was looking at it and he had a 4-speed ratchet top in it and he had the slab side. And I was like, well, the amount of money that I'm going to dump into the slab side on that thing would probably just justify getting another motor. And so I was like, well, I don't really want the motor. And because it was rock solid rusted. And I was like, nah, all right, I'm done. I don't want that. But I would take like the roller. And so he gave me kind of the lowdown on it. It has a 2014 Road Glide front end on it that's been kind of retrofitted with the 71 nacelle, which is the headlight bucket.
Oh, cool.
Which is pretty cool because I have like a 1-inch solid like front axle, which is nice because it stays nice and planted. It doesn't have kind of the fork flex and stuff. So it stays nice and level. And then everything else was kind of like, it took me about 3 years to build it, which was like, so I had the frame and I knew I wanted to do something a little different. Most of the guys that run Shovelheads, they're either doing they do choppers and bobbers and stuff like that. Most of them are running like an 18 or 21-inch front wheel. Or they're running like the stock 16s. And one of the things that I always thought with the Shovelheads was like, because the knuckleheads and the panheads, or actually I think for the panheads, they switched to 16s, which I was like, I'm a big hoop guy. I'm like, dude, like old 20s and 30s motorcycles with like 23-inch wheels on them. I have like old board track racers and stuff like that.
Cool.
I was just like, dude, why did they leave that aesthetic? It's so cool. I love like spindlier looking wheels. And like, I've always thought that the Shovelhead looked like it skipped leg day. You know what I mean? Where I was just like, God, it's such a beautiful frame. Yeah. The panhead, the early panheads and the first shovels. I was like, it's such a beautiful frame with the suspension and everything. They did such a good job in designing the geometry for this bike. But every single bike that I've ever seen that's like running a stock setup, even if it's got like a 18 or a 21 inch front wheel, the back end just looks like it's like, like, I don't really want to do it today. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, so I was like, dude, there's got to be a way to put an 18. I'm like, why hasn't anyone really done this? Which will definitely cover why probably no one's done it, because we were
found out, huh?
Yeah, because we were scheduled for another podcast earlier, you know, a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, I found out why. They were like, hey, 18 might not be a good idea back there. Okay. But I figured, so since then I've had to do some like reverse engineering on it and try to figure some stuff out. And I got it now kind of dialed into where it's not going to be an issue anymore. So that still begs the question, like, man, it's such a beautiful bike. Why didn't they just put bigger hoops in it? Because the way the bike sits, I still ride pretty low and everything. It's still got a great standover height and everything. It's still, and most of my goal with the bike was to be like, oh, that's a pretty cool Shovelhead with like aftermarket pipes on it kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of like real subtle things that I've done with the bike. Most everything on it's been narrowed, and most everything on it's been like chopped and refitted and like restructured. So, and I found that out when we were like having issues with the carb, and I had a S&S Super B, and I was like, oh, well, I can just redesign the pipe. And then I was like, oh, no, I can't. Because like if I have to redesign that top pipe, that means I have to redesign the back pipe, which means I have to redesign all of the mounts for the pipes, which means I have to get a new battery box, which means I have to get this, and this. And so it was just like a domino effect. So I was like, all right, shorty E-carb it is, just rebuild it and get it going. But anyway.
Ask any car guy, what's something that you'd like to change in your build? And I guarantee he'll say something about the electrical wiring. Because just like going shoe shopping with your girl, it can feel overwhelming and hopeless. But great news, the Piece and Grease podcast is sponsored by WireCare. They've got all the connectors and terminal ends, sleeving, heat shrink, zip ties, and all the tools to make your project's electrical wiring something to be proud of and show off at the next cruise night, because it's done safe and organized and done right. We're excited to be working with WireCare at the Piece and Grease HQ, so go check out their products and tools at wirecare.com.
So you're saying that everything's connected. If you changed one
yeah, pretty much. Because I was like, you know, I like really tight tolerances and stuff. And so like that came with, I used to be a bicycle mechanic at Eric's Bike Shop. And I've messed with bicycles since I was a kid. You know, since I was like real little, I was like, you know, my dad bought me a BMX bike as a kid. And he was like, all right, this is yours. And like, it's yours to take care of. And like, so he just was like, dude, just please don't make me regret buying you this thing. Right. And I was like, yes, sir. And like within probably a day, I had it like taken apart, because I was just like, I got to figure it out. You know, like I want to change this and I want to change this. And then I couldn't figure it. Like there's so many like stories like that, you know, starting out where like, you know, people are like, I just had to figure it out when my dad told me not to. And I was like, sure. And then as soon as I was like out of earshot, I was like, where's the wrenches? Like let's get it. And then he had to like put it back together and stuff. And so then I had that bike for a while, and I've loved bicycles since then. And so, but I've always been like driven to be like, no, I want to fix it myself, you know? Yeah. And so like just tinkering with it enough got me to a point where I was like, all right, now I can like do whatever I need to do with this bicycle. Yeah. And it just was like, skyrocketed from there. Cool. So like as soon as I turned 16, again, like I was like, how do I modify this thing in a way that like is gonna make it cooler?
Yeah.
So it took off. And
like, this is cool-ish, but I can make it better.
Yeah. Well, my first car definitely wasn't cool in any means. So
what'd you have?
Oh, it was a 1998 Ford Taurus station wagon that was my mom's for like quite a while. And then it was my older brother's for probably as long.
Oh, man.
And then it was mine. And I had it for a total of maybe like, I want to say maybe 2 months. And then I was like, we got to figure out how to like do some shit with this thing. And we were like trying to figure out how to hop it up. And who the fuck is going to hop up a 1998 Ford Taurus station wagon?
Yeah.
Like no aftermarket support, which I was like dismally disappointed with.
This 3-liter's going to rock.
Yeah, dude.
Watch, man.
Dude, I was like, there's no exhaust for it. There's no intakes for it. Nobody makes suspension for it. What is up? And so we were, me and my friends, we were like, whatever. It's our first like taste of like real freedom. Cause like when you get your bike as a kid, that's like your first taste of freedom as a kid, but you're still like really limited. And even then, like we would like ride our bikes from, I grew up in Waltham, which is a tiny little town. And then, but some of my friends lived in Hayfield, which is like 5 miles away. And like, 12, 13 years old, we were like, all right, man, let's go. And then we'd spend like half the day pedaling to Hayfield on BMX bikes. Yeah. And then just be like, oh God. And then we'd hang out with our friends only to realize that like we've played our hearts out. Now we have to ride 5 miles back home, kind of thing. So it's like that. So like, again, with like the freedom you get as a kid, but you're still kind of within the constraints of that. But then once you turn 16 and you get a car, then it's like, the light bulb goes out and you're just like, I can go to Wisconsin. I can go to Canada. Like, who's going to stop me? Kind of thing, And so, but anyway, like we had this car and me and my friends, we did so much stupid things with it. And like, and then I did what every 16-year-old does, I think. And well, especially with like a need for horsepower that has none, right? Is they're like, how can I make this car burn out?
Yes.
And anybody that knows how to make an automatic car burn out with 0 horsepower is a neutral drop.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yep. That's right. That's the way it's done.
Yeah.
You probably had an older kid show you how to do it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Drew Buttress was like, you just got to give it some gas, man. Put her in neutral. Just jam that thing in the drive. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
Too many times. And I was like on one of the roads I should say the road in Waltham, which is probably as far away from my house as we could get. And I was like in front of my buddy Anthony's house. And I was like, and my friend Beaver was like, dude, let's see it freaking smoke it. Because we had done it before. And he was like, dude, you're never going to believe what this car can do. Because obviously it's a Ford Taurus station wagon.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we were like, neutral drop, pow, no more transmission. 4 neutrals is what it had. And I was like, oh my God, no, now I don't have a car. And so I was like,
freedom gone.
Yeah, all the freedom. It was just like, go push it back home. It was like 6 blocks. We pushed it back to the house. And then my mom's like, what happened? And I was like, I have no idea.
I was going to the store.
Oh, there was a lot of that when I was 16. And like my mom, she's a saint. She really is. Because like I put her through so much hell with cars. Like she had an Alero that I ripped the exhaust, or no, what did I do with the Alero? I smashed the windshield out with my head. Yeah, because we were drinking at a party, and I was like, we were trying to do the William Shatner across the hood of the car, and I'd never done it before. Smacked my head on the windshield, cracked the windshield with the back of my head, right? And got home, and my mom's like, what the hell happened? I was like, I hit a pheasant. Right? And it wasn't until like 2 years later that I told her, no, that was the back of my head that did that. And she's like, oh my God. And then she had a Chevy Impala that I took through the ditch at speed and like ripped the exhaust off when she wasn't like, I literally like took the car at night. She had fallen asleep and I was like, I'll be real stealthy with it. Right? Took the car after she fell asleep and then accidentally got into the ditch because it was winter. And then I had me and Beaver, my buddy Beaver, we get into a lot of hairy things. And anyway, I'm driving through the ditch, and he goes, I think there's a culvert there. And then all of a sudden the car goes, bam. He just sees me launch off the culvert, rips the exhaust off the bottom of the car, and immediately is just loud. And then the next day, my mom's like, my car sounds louder. And I was like, I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. Maybe you should take it to a muffler shop
at the nursing home. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I was like, sounds like a muffler. Maybe it's the muffler. And then she brought it back home. She's like, what the hell did you do to my car? I was like, it wasn't me, I swear. But she had infinite patience. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, she's a saint for that. So
awesome. Well done.
Yeah, but every 16-year-old is just like,
oh yeah,
they got to give their parents a little hell. I'm 5 years away, and I'm like, oh God, if she's anything like me, it's gonna be a nightmare. So I'm definitely due some karma for that.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
Yep.
She's a really good kiddo though. So
cool.
Hopefully she stays that way. I don't know. She hears, she's like, Dad, tell one of your stories. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't get used to me being telling the crazy crap that I did when I was a kid.
Man,
but she loves hearing them. So
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll do it.
Cool.
But yeah, the bike, I just I fell in love with Shovelheads probably from my uncle. Yeah, my Uncle Bob, he was really big into Shovelheads when I was a kid. Cool. And he had one, and I was always it always kind of stuck in the back of my head, Shovelhead. I got to get a Shovelhead at some point. Mm-hmm. And then later, growing up and just kind of getting into the custom car and bike world and stuff. I had plenty of hot rods after the Ford Taurus.
Okay, things got better. Things improved.
Vastly, I would say. My mom probably not so much, but because so I worked at a place called Interstate Mills in Hayfield after that, when I was 17 years old, and every day I'd get done with school and I'd walk to Interstate Mills because my mom worked in Casson. She'd pick me up on her way home, and I'd work there for probably an hour or two after work or after school and stuff. It was just I was scraping elevators and stuff, the elevator screens and stuff. So I'd get in the dryer and I'd scrape the elevator and everything. I'd do
really dusty and
it was
dangerous.
Disgusting. Yeah, it was because it's all all of the wet condensating corn crap.
Yeah,
I'd say is condensated on the inside of the dryer. You scrape it off, and it wasn't a glamorous job by any means, but it was 16 and I was I can make money doing it.
Yeah.
But anyway, on my way to that job every day after school, I passed Wally Eklund's house. And Wally Eklund had a 1983 Monte Carlo Super Sport sitting by his garage in the weeds.
Yeah.
And it sat there. It was there since I moved to Minnesota. And I always I love G-body Chevys.
Yeah.
And so I'd walk past it. And then finally one day I'm going to go ask him. And so I walked up. Wally he had a laryngectomy, so he didn't have a voice box. Sure. And he couldn't write or he couldn't speak without a thing.
One of those things.
Yeah. And so I walk up, knock on the door, and I'm like, would you sell that Monte Carlo? And he's like, get out of here. Pretty much. And so a couple months go by and I just knock on the door again. I'm like, Wally, come on, it's still there. Nothing. And for 6 months, I'm every other day pretty much on my way to work. Stop by, knock on his door, and he's like, not a chance, And then finally one day, he meets me at the door, and he goes, writes on a piece of paper, what do you want it for? And I was like, well, I want to build a car, and I want to do something, and I just love that car, and I'd like to get it going. I hate seeing it sitting there and everything like that, which was the right answer because he was wrote down $1,500 on the paper. And I was like, hold on, I'll be right back. Ran up to Citizen State Bank, pulled out $1,500 that I had saved, ran back to Wally's place, gave him $1,500 in cash. And then he writes down on the paper, doesn't run. And my mom begged me to not buy that car. Oh, man. Because I told her about it. And we stopped by, she looked at it. She's like, don't buy this thing. It wasn't in the greatest shape. It was a little rusty and it was kind of rough. but I was like in love with it. It was a blue Monte Carlo, of like that really deep midnight blue purple, and it had blue interior with white leather accents on the doors.
Oh, cool.
And it had white leather headrests with SS stitching. I loved it.
I can picture it. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous car. I love it. And but that to me was like, that's it. That was it. That's what I wanted. And so, you know, I knew it didn't run. And so then I would walk to work. And then after I was done with work, I would go over to Napa, and then I'd pick up whatever the car needed at the moment to that point, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then sometimes I'd like take the carb off or something. Like the first time I think I took the carb off, I brought it into small engines. And like we went over kind of like rebuilding it and stuff like that. And Mr. Totten, one of my shop teachers, who was awesome.
Cool.
He was like, yeah. So, and we went over it as kind of a class a little bit. And then like he let me rebuild it in class.
Nice.
Brought it over, dropped it back in. And then it needed like distributor. And then it needed a battery. Okay. So it wasn't like crazy.
Did you say which engine did this thing have in it?
It had a 305 in it.
Yep.
It was a pretty choked out 305 because it had all of the like emission stuff, which comes into play after a second. Because like, so I get this thing fired up. I'm like, yes, I got it. You know, after like maybe a week of tinkering with it or something like that, like got it running. I was like, hell yeah. And we take it out. Me and Wally take it out for a spin, kind of like his final like go.
Yeah.
Right. And then I drop him off back at home. And then I'm like, all right, take this thing home. Got it out on 56 and I made it 4 miles down the road. I was probably 1.5 miles outside of Waltham when the thing vapor locked through a rod and just grenaded. And that was like devastating.
You went from mountain high.
Oh yeah. Talking like, but that's a pretty common trend in my motoring.
Oh man!
So I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this!" And but my uncle Bob, who got me like really in love with Shovelheads, he's like, "Well, I'll ask around and see if I can find a motor." And he had a buddy who had a Vortec 350. Again, earlier when I was telling you, like, ask me how I know how a Vortec has the center bolts that go vertical.
Yep. Vertical intake bolts.
Yep. And I like, so previously when I had like bought this 305, 350 intake for the stock 305, right? Yeah. Not a Vortec intake, but a 305 intake.
Yep.
And so I had it because I was going to put it on the motor. And then, but then again, I was like, hey, I asked my shop teacher, Mr. Totten, like, do you care if I take this motor and rebuild it and like kind of make it into something a little bit more hopped up? Because I was like, if the motor's already out, like I may as well do something fun with it.
Yeah. Now's the time.
Yeah. And
you're
so
like 17?
I was, I think, 17 years old. So I was in junior year, I think. And so he was like, James, you're the only one that does anything in class. I don't give a fuck what you do.
Cool.
I was like, awesome.
Right on.
So I brought the motor in on a motor stand and I rebuilt it in a couple months and everything. And we did some cool stuff. We put a little bit of a cam in it. Yeah. And we did like just little things. I didn't want it to be too crazy because I was like, I had no idea what the hell I was doing at the time.
Well, sure.
But I was like, all my friends were like, do this, do this, do this. And I was like, absolutely. And so we did that. You know, we did everything we could. Put new timing gears on it and everything, and all, you know, everything that we could do to make it run as good as we could. Yeah. And then I had to like modify the 305 intake, which I did to fit the Vortec. So we had a mill. Like Hayfield shop is amazing. Like probably not as good as like some of the surrounding areas, but like we had a mill, we had a lathe, we had like all this like metalwork and stuff, which again like got me into like I love this. This is like another aspect of like fabrication that I'm just like, oh my God, I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so like we milled out the plane of it and then we drilled into it so that way it'd work for the Vortec. So we modified this Edelbrock Performer to work for that.
Yeah.
And then bolted it up. And then it was like close to the end of school and none of us had a truck. And so we were like, I asked Mr. Totten if I could bring the car in to drop it in. And he's like, liability, absolutely not.
Okay.
So I was like, how the hell are we gonna do this? So me and 2 or 3 of my friends like pushed this motor like down Main Street, like on a freaking motor dolly like that. We're like trying to keep it from tipping, and finally one of my buddies shows up with a truck. We throw it in the back of it. We make it like, because we were like, I don't know, 3 or 4 blocks down the road, and then he shows up with the truck and he's like, get it in here. So we like heave the thing in the back of it, and we go the other 4 blocks or whatever it is. Man. And then my buddy Josh, we put it on, we put the motor in the car in front of his house.
Cool.
You know, like all those like 70s and 60s stories about people like dropping a motor in front of the house. That's what we did.
Yeah. Like somebody had a cherry picker
you
could borrow or something.
Yeah. And we were like, okay, it's cool. So we did that. Nice. And then, and we're just about done buttoning it up. And Wally Eklund comes walking around the corner.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, he's like white as a sheet. He's just like, what happened? Kind of, you know, you could see he was just like, what did you do to my car? Kind of thing.
Okay.
But then he gets closer and he looks in it and he sees the motor that we built and he's like, all right. Yeah. And he's like, cool, man.
Right on.
Because we had taken all the smog stuff off of it. It was a 350.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was a pretty 350.
So you'd gotten rid of the 305 and you started over?
I still had the 305, but I was like, I don't know what I wanted to do with it. It just kind of sat. And I was like, after a while, I gave it to one of my buddies. I think I gave it actually to my uncle, who was like, if you want to know someone who wants it, I think he got rid of it. Cool. But I was just like, cool, this is like, but Wally was there.
Approved.
Wally was like super psyched on it because he was there when we were bolting up I put a 700 R4 in it because I wanted another gear.
Nice.
And so I was like, cool. So I was sticking that up, and I again in small engines, I put a B&M shift kit in it. I was like ready to go.
We're doing this.
Yeah, I was like, if I'm gonna hop the motor up a little, I may as well like get some shift in there too. And so I was like, it's out, may as well. So we rebuilt that, and then we were sticking that in, got it all going, and then it was just like open headers, right?
Yeah.
And then we got it running, and I was like, this is dope. And I was so psyched that I was like, we're gonna take it to my uncle because he got me the motor.
Cool.
So I was like, hell yeah. So I drove it to Austin, all the way to Austin, and it was just like, wow, just like the loudest, because it was literally just like open headers.
Oh yeah.
Dumping out, and it was loud as hell going down.
All the chicks are gonna see me.
Oh yeah, that was my first thing. I was just
nothing
like,
but deputies that get.
Yep, it was, because I got into Austin like right into city limits, and my uncle didn't live that far into Austin. I hit 218 south, and I made it maybe like 3 blocks, and I got lit up, and the cop was like, get this thing the fuck out of here. It's 8:00 at night. And I'm like, okay. And so I drove it back to Waltham. And then me and my friends scabbed together like a super shitty exhaust for it just to like calm it down. And we put some cherry bombs and some dropouts on it. It's like, good enough, man. Let's go. And I had that car, and I loved that car. I drove the piss out of that car.
Awesome.
One of my favorite memories in it is that I got all running and then took it to Austin after I got exhaust on it. Cool. And the sheriff's deputy pulled up next to me, and he goes, let's see what that thing's got. I was like, absolutely not. And he was like, no, let's see it. And I was like, all right. And we freaking lit down Broadway in Austin like as fast as we could rip.
Oh, geez.
And he schooled me because, I mean, it's a big car, and he was in like a newer Interceptor or something. But I was like, and I tried it, and he pulled off in a quick trip, and he's like, thing's pretty cool, man. And we sat and chatted with it a little bit.
Nice.
It was pretty fun. So, but
good to know your local law enforcement.
Yeah.
The right way.
Right, for sure. Well, later on, they got to know me the wrong way. And after a while, they were like, what the hell are you doing, man? You know you don't have a license. Get home. Like, good thing Mower County Sheriff Deputy Quam, he was an awesome guy because he escorted me to jail a few times. And he escorted me to court a few times. It was like, hey, you don't got to ride to court. I'll take you. And I was like, all right. And so he took me in a few times where he was like, dude, you don't have a license. So I lost my license 3 months after I got, or 3 weeks after I got it. I didn't get it back until I was 27 years old when my daughter was born.
Oh, wow.
And so but it didn't stop me from driving. And it definitely didn't stop me from doing stupid shit.
Wow.
But
Man.
I don't know.
Huh.
Talk about a slow learner,
Well,
but
hey, yeah,
it's all part of it, right? I guess. I don't know.
yeah,
We'll
cool.
see.
So that was your second car, was the Monte Carlo.
Monte Carlo, yeah.
Cool.
I love that.
Cool.
So,
That's awesome. So what got you into bikes then? Going from, I mean, you said your uncle was a huge
Yeah.
influence on that, but
So-
what was your first bike?
funny enough, I actually didn't get into motorcycles until a lot later. And I did. My mom's boyfriend's kids, they bought like a CB360 on their farm.
Cool.
And that was the first motorcycle I ever rode.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I fucking love this. This
Yeah.
was like, because I loved my bicycle. And I didn't mind, I loved cars, but as soon as I took my first ride on that CB360, I was hooked. I was like,
Cool.
This is the coolest thing in the world, man. I felt like Steve McQueen in The Great Escape.
Yeah.
We were jumping it over ruts, and we were just doing all the shit that you're not supposed to do with a street CB bike. We were like, just tearing ass.
Yep.
And I would always get to a point, because I didn't get to ride it all that much, but I was always like, man, every time I rode it, I was like, I'm going to see how fast I can get on this thing. And I'd tear ass around that farm as much until they were like, all right, man, let me have it back.
Yeah.
And then fast forward a few years, and it was my senior year, and we were looking for like something to do as for like a senior project for welding and fabrication.
Cool.
And I was like, all my other, there was like 3 or 4 other guys in my shop class were like, we're going to build mini choppers. And they had kind of like a template to build them, which I hated.
Yeah.
Because it had like this like wheel that was like this big. And then my buddy Brady Crabtree comes in to school one day, and he's got a wheel that's like this. It's a back lawnmower wheel, and it's like this big, and it's super fat.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, that's dope.
Cool.
I want to make a motorcycle with that. Right. And he was like, okay. And so again, I took I was in small engines again, and or small engines 2 or something. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Totten was like, do whatever, man. I don't care. And so I took a 8-horse Briggs & Stratton. We took that out. We stroked it with a 10-horse crank. So it was like kind of hopped up. It had a good stroke to it. It was a thumping fucking motor. It was dope. And then I built this bike around it. I literally made the frame, the whole front fork, everything on it. And it had a snowmobile primary on it with a snowmobile jackshaft secondary.
Nice.
And it did 55 miles an hour. And I was like, that's what's up.
Yeah.
Had a little old school moped. It was the sketchiest thing because it had a bicycle 21 or 20-inch wheel on the front of it. And the first time I got it over 50 miles an hour, I got back to the shop with it, and the thing was just smoking.
Oh, geez.
Think of like old shitty BMX wheel bearings.
Yeah, yeah.
Just cooked. And I was like, all right, I got to do something better than that. So then I put like sealed bearing wheel on it and everything. Okay. And I was like, that should do. And it held up until the day I got rid of it. And, but I had that bike until I was like, I don't know, 22 or 23 years old. I just took it around with me everywhere.
Awesome.
In fact, after I got it running and after I got it going, I took it home. And I was on 56 and I was doing 55 miles an hour with it. And Quam pulled me over and was like, what is this? And he's like, you got no tag. This thing is not legal to ride on the road. And I was like, it's under 50 cc's. It's an 8-horse Briggs & Stratton because it still had 8 horses on it. I was like, it's under 75 cc's. Yeah. So I was like, technically it is legal to ride without a license. And he's like, wrote me up a ticket for illegal vehicle. I had to pay a fine. And I was like, all right. And then sure enough, probably like 2 or 3 months later, we had it in Hayfield again, me and my buddies, and we're ripping down 30, and it's 30 miles an hour through Hayfield, and they clock me doing 55. And they're like, you're getting a speeding ticket, dude. Like, what are you doing? And so, so I was like, I loved it, but I was like, that was my little homemade, jacked up, crappy little mini chopper that I just ripped everywhere. All the way through high school, I just was like tear ass down the road with that thing. And then I didn't get my first bike until I was probably like 19 years old. It was a CX 500 that I wanted to like cafe out.
Cool.
And so I bought a bunch of parts for it, but I didn't really have any tools. I didn't have the time to really work on it or do anything. So I like ended up letting that one go. Mm-hmm. And then I really wanted to build a board tracker. And again, it was one of those things where like no shop, no money, no anything. And I was just like, man, this sucks. Yeah. I just wanted another motorcycle.
I understand.
Yeah. And then, and it wasn't actually until I was tattooing that I got another bike. So it was like, probably the third or fourth year that I was tattooing, and at Sacred Heart in Rochester.
Okay.
And the owner Matt had taken in a trade for a tattoo, and he got like an 02 Honda Shadow 750.
Okay.
And his wife was like, "No, like you're not getting on a motorcycle." And he was like, "Damn it!" And so he was like trying to figure out what to do with it.
What am I gonna do with
he ended up selling it to his brother Adam, who had like just sold his Harley. I'd never ridden a Harley before in my life, right? And my good buddy Jim, who's like worked tattoos with me and is like my co-owner at Six of Swords, he had a really nice Softail. And so, but the first like road bike that I ever rode was that what is it, the Honda Shadow 750.
Yep.
That was the first one I ever was like legal.
Sure. Okay.
Rode it like how I should, because it's like a road bike.
Yeah.
And I was like, I love this, but it sounded like a Jetsons bike. And I was like, I didn't care, because I was just like getting into the bike.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just like being on it and doing 60, 75 miles an hour. I was like, this is great. Cool. Well, I rode that for a little bit, and then Jim let me ride his Softail. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Because it was like the first time it was just like when I got on that CB360.
Cool.
I was like, this is it. This is what I want.
Cool.
And so I was like, just determined. I was like looking around, and most of the bikes that were like Jim's were like probably $5,000 or $6,000. And I'm horrible at saving money. Like, and I was just like, I gotta get something like this. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I know how to build shit. I know how to like put things together. I'm really good at learning stuff. Yeah. I'm gonna build a motorcycle. I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. So I bought this lift, and then I was like, let's go. And I bought wheels for it first, because I was like, I wanted to build like a retro style bike, but I wanted it to be a lot more reliable. So I decided on a 80 cubic inch Evo power plant. And I was looking around for those. I ended up finding one in La Crosse, and I had the motor, the wheels, and and then the guts for a 5-speed, but no case. And I bought all that for probably like little under $1,500, right? Sure. And then I was like, all right, time to get a frame. Ordered a frame, and I started putting it together, and then it started to kind of take shape. And I was like, hell yeah, this is going somewhere. And I'd kind of mess around with it. I ended up rebuilding the transmission and put it in the case and everything like that. So I learned how to rebuild the 5-speed and do all that, which was super fun.
And how are you learning? How are you figuring this stuff out?
Some YouTube. I did ask my uncle a lot of stuff. And like, but there was a really great whole breakdown on YouTube. Like, YouTube is the greatest, like, whatever you want to learn it on YouTube kind of thing. Yeah. And I pretty much built that whole bike off of what I saw on YouTube. I'd look it up, and I'd be like, all right. And I'd find like I'd always like cross-reference stuff, because of some stuff like timing and like what to run for an ignition and all that stuff is really subject to opinion. Sure. And so I was just like, I got to cross-reference a lot of this stuff, and I got to figure out like what's more reliable, what's like the best way to make this thing like start every time, go down the road safe, right? Yeah. And so I built it up, and then we were looking at buying, and I had it pretty much finished, except for it just needed a paint job, right? So it was like down to like its primer, but it was done. The bike was finished. I had ridden it around a bunch. It was just all ratty looking and everything, because it had like rust on it and primer here and there and stuff. And like,
you said you ordered the frame, so it has like a VIN number on it, or how does that work?
So that was like it had a certificate, manufacturer certificate of origin, is what they call it. Cool. And so that's how you end up titling it. Oh, okay. So you just essentially bring it to the DMV along with like a bill of sale for the motor, which has a VIN number on it. So they'll run the motor VIN to make sure it's not stolen.
Okay.
Or something. And as long as it doesn't come back stolen, they're like, all right, well, that's the VIN for the motor. You need a VIN for the motor. You need a certificate of origin for the frame or a title for the frame, and then you need something to say for like the transmission. Okay. So the three major points that you need to like title something like that is you need those three. You need a bill of sale for all of them, and you need like an origin for them. And so I was like, all right, I had all that.
Cool.
And so, we freaking got that thing running, and I scooted around for that. And then we were looking at buying a house in Casson. And I was like, man, again, I'm terrible at saving money. And we were like, we needed a good down payment. And I was like, the bike's done. Yeah. And there's plenty of people that would probably want something like that. So I put it up on Marketplace. And I had gobs of people just like chomping at the bit to buy it. And I like every person that came and looked at it, I found a reason to be like, I can't get rid of it, man. I can't let it go. And like, so then eventually I ended up saving the money. Like me and my wife put some money together and like had our down payment and everything. So I was like, oh, I don't need it anymore. I can take it off Marketplace. I can keep the bike. Yeah. So I took it off Marketplace. The day I took it off of Marketplace, my dad calls me. And he goes, did you sell your motorcycle? I was really looking forward to buying it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he was like, I was going to buy it from you because then you guys could get your money for your thing. And I really like that bike. And as soon as he said that, I was like, yeah, Dad, I sold it. I let it go down the road. Because as soon as he told me that he was interested in purchasing it, I was like, I'm going to give it to my dad. Because he was a 21-year vet Marine. He'd been to Afghanistan and Iraq. He'd fought for his country. He'd raised us and like took care of us our whole lives. And like, I was like, and he just retired from the Marine Corps. Wow. So I was like, I'm giving this bike to my dad. And I immediately messaged my stepmom. And I was like, hey, when is the next day you guys coming up? I'm going to give Dad the bike. Don't tell him. So we kind of got in cahoots, and we were like trying to figure out when he was going to come up. And he was going to come up for his birthday. He was going to kind of, and I didn't know it at the time, but he was going to surprise us all with the fact that he was moving back to Minnesota.
And where was he at?
He was out in Fernley, Nevada.
Okay.
And so I was like, hell yeah, I got a little bit of time. So we orchestrated it, and I, talked to my stepmom, and we're like, is there any way you can get me Dad's dog tag? Because that's how I want to like present it to him. And so he thought I had sold the bike. It was like gone. Nick's brother painted it for me.
Oh, cool.
And everything. And then what was there's a little hiccup in the story is because like after or before I had told him, I actually had him paint it, and I was like, it's done now. And then I had it up on the lift, fell off the lift. Like and it happened in like the middle of the night. And this was when we were living in Rochester. So I like heard the crash, and I like grabbed my gun because I thought someone was like trying to break into our house. And I'm like halfway to the garage, and then I took like 2 steps, and I was like, there's the motorcycle. I knew it immediately. I walked down to the garage, turned the light on the garage, looked out, and the bike's sitting there like a kid leaves his bike on the, just upside down off the lift. And I was like, smashed the headlight, and the rear fender was schmucked. And I was like, crap. So I ordered a new fender for it, and I ordered a new headlight, got the headlight powder coated black, and then Jeremy Peterson did all the pinstriping on it and everything.
Cool.
And then, but when my dad came up, it didn't have a fender on the back of it. And I was like, don't worry. And then he surprised us saying that like, hey, so that was a cool story. So I put it down in my shop, or in my upstairs garage, actually. My dad came in, and we had just bought our house in Casson. And so we're like walking him through the house and showing him kind of everything and then the last thing I was like, and then in the meantime, my stepmom hands me off his dog tag, and I was like, I gotta go to the bathroom quick, and I ran down to our downstairs bathroom, and I quick swapped his dog tag on the keychain for it. And then as he's like getting ready to leave, they're getting ready to go, I was like, oh, wait, I got to show you we forgot to show you the coolest part of the house. The upstairs garage is like pretty cool. And he's like, oh yeah. And so then we walk out and there's the bike. And he's like, oh, you sold this. And I was like, I think he was just waiting for his new owner. And I was like, you want to hear it? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, you start it. Handed him the key for the bike. And he realizes that there was a dog tag on it. And he was like, that's my dog tag. And I was like, probably your bike then. And he's like, are you serious? I was like, yeah. And I was so happy to give him that. That's awesome. I got a little tear out of my Marine Corps dad.
Oh man.
I was like, yeah. And like, me and my stepmom were high-fiving, like, we got him. Nice. And so then I fired up for him. He's like, well, I actually came up to tell you guys, everyone, that we're moving back to Minnesota in September. Wow. And I was like, awesome. So I was like, well, by September, the fender will be done. We'll be ready to go. So I had the fender ordered up already. I just needed to get it painted. And then Nick's brother was like really good, because before he painted it like a gray, because he was painting a Jeep at the same time. So it worked out pretty good. So he was just like, dude, I'll just do both. Yeah. Right. Well, then I was like, hey, we got to like paint match this thing now. But he wasn't spraying the Jeep anymore. So it took a lot longer. Mm-hmm. And so finally I was like, hey, we got to get this thing going, because my dad's coming up at the beginning of September. He's like, okay. And so it took a bit for him to get it, and it was like right up to the deadline, and he got it back to me, and I was in such a hurry that I threw it back on the bike, and I was like, all right, now I got to give it like a proper shakedown, right? And so I put it on the bike, and I remember specifically the bolt that held the bottom of the fender, because it had a 3-point system on it. It had struts that mounted to the side of the back of the frame, and then it had a singular bolt that went through the bottom of the frame. And I remember thinking to myself, like, before I had everything lock nutted. I used a nylock for everything, but I didn't have any nylocks, and I was like, I'll get to it. So I put 2 lock washers on it, thinking like that should be good enough till I get a nylock. And then complacency set in. I forgot about it, right? Few weeks go by, and I'm like, still haven't gotten a chance to like take the bike out for a shakedown. And so then finally I get a day, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take it for a spin. I took it for a spin. I went over to like Whitewater, and then rode south towards like Harmony, and then hit Harmony, came back up to Austin. Had dinner. Everything's running great. It's like awesome. The bike leaned out a little bit, and I was like trying to tinker with it as we were rolling and everything like that, but I couldn't quite get it to like match up, so I kind of had to keep going back to like where it was running and everything. But I was like, as long as I don't overdo it, I shouldn't, scorch it. Yeah. And I'd take breaks every now and then, but I stopped in at Austin. I had lunch with my mom, I think, and then I took off for home, and I was going down County 9. And I was like, man, and it was like it was that magic hour, going down County 9. And I was the only person on County 9. And I was like sitting there, and I was just thinking to myself, this is dope. I like just built this thing. I just rode like 100 miles on this thing that I put together with my bare hands. No other feeling is ever going to like beat that. Yeah. And I was just super stoked on it. And then I got it home, took the carb off. So I made it home safe and everything like that. But this was important because it was the first day that I was like, if I'm going to really commit to like riding a motorcycle, I need to wear a helmet. Because every day up until then, I never wore a helmet. I was like, I'll be fine. Right? Yeah. But I was like, if I plan on riding like regularly, I better wear a helmet. I got a kid and a wife that I love that I want to see every day. And I was like, gotta do that. And so I took that helmet on that ride, that whole ride. I was wearing my helmet. Got it home, took the carb off the bike, redid some settings on it. I think I changed a jet in it just to kind of give it a little more pep. And I was like, all right. And then I was like, I'll start it up in the morning and like we'll take it for a little jaunt to see, because it was getting kind of close to the day that my dad was going to be coming up. Yeah. So I was like, all right. So I put the carb back on the bike, figured I'd leave and I wanted the bike to be cold too to make sure I could like start it. Sure. And it would run good. Yeah. So the next day, started up in the morning, bike's running great. And I was like, hell yeah. And so then I took it out for just a little test ride to be like, and again, I was only planning on doing like a couple blocks. Didn't really plan on like going out too far, but it was a gorgeous day out. And like anybody that rides knows, like a short ride on a really nice day in Minnesota, those are like few and far between.
Oh.
So I was like, no, I'm going to take it for a little bit longer. So I had this like route that I would take, and it would go out all the way. And it's like this big route that went out to kind of like Wasioja, and then back down to the road between Dodge Center and Casson. And so I did that loop, and I was like, hell yeah, bike's running good. Should be good to give to Dad. And then I was like, looked at the time, and I was like, shit, it's kind of close to noon. I got to get to the shop, and I got to start tattooing. And I was like, yeah, I'll just ride in. I rode it for 100 miles yesterday. What's the worst that could happen, right? Those famous last words. And then I had the debate with myself where I was like, should I go home, grab my helmet, and ride in, or do I just go? And I was like, it's pretty close to noon. I'm just going to go. And so I hit 14, start riding towards Byron. Get to Byron, and I'm like, 14's kind of sketchy to ride anyway, because like people don't care and they don't like really watch out for motorcycles anymore or anything.
Back when it was still 2-lane.
Yeah. And so I'm like cruising down 14, and then it was between the Dodge Center and Casson. It was still 4-lane. Yeah, it was 4-lane. Yeah. Okay. So, but it's worse because it's like people doing 70, 80 miles an hour, not giving a crap, going down. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, if you're going to ride in today, you either need to get your helmet or you need to get off of 14. And so I got to Byron, and I was like, all right, I'm going to get off here. And so the second stoplight at Byron goes into that frontage road. And I rode that frontage road into Rochester. Riding into Rochester, I was humming right along. Boom, 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 bike's doing good. Not a care in the world, thinking like cloud nine, going to give this bike to my dad tomorrow. It's around the 600 block in Rochester. That bolt that I put in the rear fender that I did not put a lock washer on falls out of the fender. The fender kind of pitches forward, hits the ground, lodges under the rear wheel, turns the bike into a skid. And I'm doing 60 some miles an hour. And I'm just like, holy crap, what the hell? And I look back, no fender, just like sparks going, and I don't remember anything. The last thing I remember was that I need to get off the bike. And like within an instant, I woke up and like, not even joking, like no break at all. Like the moment I thought I need to get off the bike to the moment that I woke up in the trauma unit, 9 hours later, was like I blinked my eye. Whoa. All gone. No idea what happened at all. And like later people start telling me like what happened. But like I ended up high siding on the bike, getting thrown off the bike. I hit my head really hard. I fractured my skull from my temple to the back of my head. Really? Yep. I broke 3 ribs and the talus bone in my ankle. Absolutely shredded my back, tore my knees down to like just ground hamburger. Oh. And I was like hemorrhaging hard out of my ear. And this guy, a couple people show up and they're like, hey, we got to like help this guy. Right. Yeah. And so
people saw you wreck.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like there was a couple people not too far behind me and they came up on me. One of them was one of my best friend's like buddies, and he recognized me. And he immediately like took a picture of me, sent it to my buddy and was like, dude, is this your homie? And Anthony was like, yeah. And so he was like, holy shit, this is bad. So he gets a hold of my wife. So she kind of knows what's going on. And Anthony's like, dude, James was in a really bad motorcycle accident. He's probably going to be going into St. Mary's. And so, but anyway, these 2 people are there and they're kind of like trying to figure out what to do because I'm hemorrhaging really bad out of my ear, like bad. And so one of them, I guess, again, this is all pieced back from like testimonial that I got from people that were there, was like, they were trying to figure out how to stop the bleeding in my ear. And then I think a nurse showed up. A third person came and was like, absolutely not. Do not do that. I've never met that person. I've never been able to find her. Wow. But she was definitely like my guardian angel that day. Yeah. Because she shows up and she goes, no, don't do that. You cannot do that. You can't put that on his ear. Because if you stop the bleeding in his ear and he's hemorrhaging internally, it's going to mess you up, or it's going to mess him up. Okay. It's going to like cause pressure to the brain. He's going to have brain damage then. You got to just let him hemorrhage, wait for the ambulance. Ambulance gets there. They get me onto the gurney, take me in, and they stabilize me and everything. They stop me bleeding and everything. Wake up 9 hours later in a trauma unit.
Wow.
It was wild. It sucked. And so like, road to recovery was pretty long. Okay. It was like, honestly, I really didn't feel like myself again until probably like 3 or 4 months later. Okay. It was like, my wife was a godsend. She like took care of me in the hospital. She like literally like helped me go to the bathroom, helped me like shower and everything like that. Wow. Cause I was busted up. I was really busted up. Wow. And,
so you were a husband, were you a dad at that time too? Okay.
Yeah. My poor kiddo, she's like, I can't even imagine what was going through her mind. I hate thinking about it, about like, cause she actually came into the ER, her and my wife's sister, Gina, like got to the ER and they were like working on me. Right. And they brought her back, Izzy back. Cause again, they were like, it was real touch and go for a bit. Yeah. So they bring Izzy back. And like the moment they bring her into the ER room, apparently they like had me on my side. And then like the second she walks in, they like pitch me over and like all the blood in my head was just like, come pouring out. And like my daughter saw that and I was like,
how old was she?
She was 5 or 6 years old. It was like horrible core memory, like right at the beginning, you know? So I was like, holy crap. So I was pretty devastated to hear that later. And it got me thinking like, oh God, like I gotta. So I contemplated on whether or not I was going to get back into motorcycles. But I was, it was 2019. It was August 30th of 2019. It was 3 days before my dad was supposed to take delivery of that motorcycle, to which I thank God every day that I took the hit, because my dad's 61 years old now, and he was late mid-50s. And so when that happened, and I was like, if he'd have taken that, if I'd have given him that bike and he would have taken it out, I don't know, like there's no way to tell, but that's a hell of a recovery for someone, 55 and older to take. So I was 20 or I was 30, I don't know. I was 30 something. Okay. But, so I was like,
so he didn't get the bike. The bike was totaled.
Yeah, it was pretty banged up. It wasn't totaled, but it was like the rear fender was obviously junk. Sure. And the front fender actually fared no scratches at all. Not a scratch on it. And like the handlebars were busted up real bad. The pipes were done. And then the left side gas tank was just completely gone. Yeah. And so it had pretty much ground the left bar down to nothing. The saddle that I had was all chewed up. My buddy Nick had like done a beautiful job in wrapping it in leather. And I was like, man, that sucks. Yeah. Like he ended up fixing it for me. I still have the seat from it. And I still have the gas tank on the right side gas tank for it. Kept this like a souvenir. Yeah. I had the left side gas tank that was all busted up, but I couldn't look at it anymore. I was like, I gotta get rid of this fucking thing. Yeah. So I had I kept some souvenirs from the bike and everything like that. And then it was like 3 months later that I had the bike running again. And I wasn't even done healing yet. I was like, I think it was pretty integral until like my like recovery. Okay. Cause like it was kind of around the time COVID was like starting to happen. Yeah. And I was like busted up. I had a busted I had a busted leg and I was crutching around, which 5 years prior had broken the same leg. And there's nothing worse than being like hobbled up on crutches. Yeah. And so I was like losing my mind, like trying to figure out what the hell to do. So I poured myself into rebuilding that bike. I rebuilt that bike back to how it was. And I was like, hey, Dad, I got the bike all done. And he's just like, Jim, I love you. And I love that you built that bike for me. But I cannot take that bike. Because he's like, I almost lost you because of that bike. I don't want it. He's like, there's no way that I can park that in my garage and be cool with it being in there.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay. And so I held on to the bike for a bit, and like after a while, I didn't really ride it. I kind of just kept it, and it, kind of moved around my shop a lot.
Okay.
And then finally I was kind of like, I've always wanted to build a bobber. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to take it down and I'm going to build another bike out of it. And so I took it down, and then I started to buy different parts for it. I still have the gas tank and the fenders for it and everything. And then, but I took it down, made pipes for it, and then bobbed it all out and made a really cool little bike on it. And that got me back on the bike. Yeah. And I was like, all right, I can do this. And that's the first foot clutch hand shift that I made. And I was hooked on that.
Nice.
Well, actually, the second iteration of the bike did have a jockey shift on it, but it had a front brake. The front brake transferred over to the new bobber build and everything. Yeah. I kept the front brake. I lost the front brake on this one because, safety second or third even. But like going on, I was just like, I knew I had to get back on the bike. And so my wife was like really leery about me getting back on it. And I was like, I know I have to get back on the bike if I'm ever going to ride again. Mm-hmm. So I hadn't even like really fully recovered yet. It's probably 3 months later that I got the bike running before when I was like rebuilding it. And my wife left for work, and she's like, just take it easy. And I was like, absolutely. And so I got on the bike, and I did my little route with it. And I was like feeling pretty good. I had a cast on my right leg, and I was like, I just was like tooling around town with it. But I was like, and I did that, I don't know, probably like, once or twice a week. And then finally I was like, when the cast came off, I was like, all right. And I got out on the road with it a bit, and I rode it around. And my dad was like, I swear to God, if you ever get on a motorcycle again, I'll kill you. He's like, you better pray the bike does it, because if I find out you're on two wheels, man, I'm going to beat the piss out of you.
Were you wearing your helmet?
Yes.
Okay.
I've worn a helmet pretty much every time except for today.
Except for today.
Yeah. And every other time I rode it, every time I've ridden this one, I usually wear a helmet. But I figured today we kind of, had some cool fun with it. Weren't going like crazy ripping speeds or anything like that. No. Yeah. And so I've always had my helmet after that. I always wear it. I got a kiddo I think about every time I get on it. Yeah. I want to make it home to her. And I got a wife that I love that I definitely want to make it home to. So, yeah.
Somebody wants our attention.
Somebody really wants that. But
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I rebuilt that bike into that bobber. I had the bobber for a few months and stuff. And then we were leaving Sacred Heart, and we were building our own shop in Casson.
Okay.
And
your own tattoo shop?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so while we were doing that, I went to meet Jim at the lumberyard in Rochester at the Menards North. Mm-hmm. I was like, it's a beautiful day. I'm going to take the bike. Yeah. And so I took off on the bike, had my helmet on and everything, riding along. And then I hit 14 to 52 North, the exit that goes to Menards North. I'm like cooking. And I like go to slow down, hit the front brake. The bolt that held the front brake off, sheared off. Same bike, shears off. Brake fluid goes spraying everywhere. I lose my front brake. I'm on the ramp. And I'm like, only got a rear brake now.
Yeah.
And so I start grabbing gears down, and bike's getting all squirrely. I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. So I get up to Menards, have a chat with Jim. We get what we need for what we were doing that day at the shop. And then I rode it back home with no front brake. Got home, immediately put it on Marketplace because I was like, this thing's got a gremlin in it that I cannot shake.
It wants to kill me.
It really wanted to kill me. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I never rode it again after that. Wow. I put it up on Marketplace. 3 days later, a guy from Fairbolt came and picked it up. And then he put a different tank on it, and he put new bars on it. And then he painted it. So he kind of finished it out. And I think he took the jockey shift that I had on it off too, or the foot clutch hand shift. Yeah. So he resorted it back to, and then last year he actually won, what was it? The best or second best garage build at the Dennis Kirk.
Huh.
I was like, awesome. Cool. Yeah. And then like I was like super psyched to hear it. And then like they made a video about it and they did like this interview and he gave this bullshit like how he got the bike. And he's like, I got it as a basket case. And then me and my dad always talked about doing these pipes like this. And I was like, you motherfucker. But I mean, whatever. It was just one of those things. I was like, dude, that's cool, man. He freaking took it out there and he got second. He did do a lot of work to it. He like painted it, made it look nice and everything. I don't know if he did anything else to it. He could have taken it all down and like put it back up. Okay. But who knows, man? Like it ran really good when I gave it to him. Mm-hmm. It was a hell of a basket case. You're still here. Yeah. But yeah, minus the front brake, I was like, nah, that thing ran pretty freaking good when I gave it to you, buddy. Huh. But anyway, after that, I didn't have a motorcycle anymore, and I was like, man, sad boy. So then I was like, I had a '65 Chrysler that I loved. To this day, I'm never gonna ever feel okay about selling that car. It took me 10 years to find it. I had it for 4 or 5 years, and then because of some landlord bullshit, I had to sell it. Oh. And but anyway, that's another story. But I got plenty. But anyway, I was like, I had the Chrysler, and but I was like, I really want a bike. And so then I started looking for 70s I really wanted this frame. So the first like full sprung Harley frame, I love it. They're beautiful bikes. Cool. And I was like, I was dedicated to finding one. And I found that one up in past Denison. Yeah. Drove up, picked it up, brought it home, had tins. So it had everything but the front fender. It had the gas tanks in the rear fender, had the oil bag on it, and the front and rear wheel, and then the swing arm and the nacelle in the front wheel or in the front forks. So I was like looking it over, and I was like, all right, how low can I go with 18s? Mm-hmm. So the first thing was like, let's get some 18s on it. So I bought the lowbrow spool hub because I knew I wasn't going to run a front brake on it. Wanted to keep it super clean. Yeah, that was the whole essence of the bike, as I wanted it as clean as possible.
It sure looks like it. I mean, without the front brake, and like your throttle is actually inside the handlebar, right?
So
controls out there.
It's got an Exile Cycles internal routed throttle cable in it. Cool. And then it also has an Exile Cycles. That was a whole bit of engineering to get that working. Because that was another thing. There was a lot of things that I wanted to do with it that I hadn't seen done on a swing arm frame, that I was like, you know what? I got no time limit, and I got plenty of ingenuity to like kind of figure it out. Yeah. But let's figure this out. So I bought the Sprockter set from Exile, and I bought the internally routed throttle cable. And I was like, those two are must, because I wanted nothing on the bars at all. I wanted like the bars. So I wanted people to look at it and be like, how the fuck does this thing operate? Cool. Honestly, I really did. I was like, awesome. And like, to the layman, it looks almost like a stock Shovelhead, minus the pipes, but it's got some really cool trick stuff in it. I didn't want forward controls, and I didn't want mid controls, because like forward controls to me, they're too far out, and mid controls, like I got really bad knees. And so like riding with that, like it gives you better control and everything when you're riding. But like having your knees tucked up to your belly, it's just like my knees hurt after a while. So I was like, I found this position after some trial and error, and then I made all of the controls for it. So both sides of it, it's got a foot clutch hand shift that I did. So it's got a true suicide shift in it because it doesn't have a front brake in it. Yeah. Man. And then I made the shifter for it. I made the pipes. I literally made this. This is made out of like 3 different Harley-Davidson brake. It's got a brake booster out of like a 2014 Dyna or something. And then I made this linkage and everything. That's off of like a Softail or like a Road King or something, the brake lever. And then everything else is either sockets and flat steel, and like just made it out of the other side. I think the other side's kind of cool because I made that out of a bracket that was like a pedal bracket for the clutch stop.
Nice.
And so it kind of has this cool like snake looking thing going on with it. And then I had narrowed the battery box to tighten it up. So it's narrowed down probably about 2 inches because they stick out kind of far on shovels. So I narrowed that down to tuck it under the seat, and then ran a external oil filter like that off the back, routed all that. And then one of the main like tricks with shovel heads is they sump after they sit. They'll sump the oil like down, and they'll just all the oil will drain out of the heads. They'll sump down to the bottom, and so the first kick after it like sitting for a while, it'll just spit like a good amount of oil down out of it. And so I wanted to kind of figure out how to like mitigate that. So I have this like it usually spits it out of that breather right there. You see between the
I can see it poking out.
And so I put that breather there to help kind of mitigate a little bit of that sumping.
Cool.
When you kick, it still kicks out a good amount of oil, but it's a wet filter, so it's all right. And then
old bike stuff, right?
Yeah, old bike shit.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I love most about the bike is the color of the bike really came out nice. What's kind of a trip. So 4 years ago, we lost my brother-in-law to a motorcycle accident. He was 27 years old. He was a great guy. And his favorite color was like forest green. Cool. I was like set on painting the bike like a deep like blue or like a root beer color. And I had talked with Danny at length. That was his name, Danny. I'd talked to him at length about like kind of what I wanted to do with this bike because we were both riders and we held that kind of like, and his dad, Jim. And so we had talked a bunch about it. And so I was like, dude, I want it to be this color and everything. And I had kind of chatted with him about it. Well, I got the tins done. And then I found the blue that I loved out of Paint Huffer Metal Flake. And I was like, yeah, that's it. That's the color. It's dope. It's got a lot of like really cool flake in it. It's real deep blue. Ordered it. And then my buddy Brendan Haberstead, who owns Habby's custom fabrication in Rochester, does great work. And I was like, that's the guy. That's who I want to do it. And so I gave it to him because him and my buddy Billy, they do phenomenal paint work. And so I was like, dope, dude, can you take this? And he was all hyped to do it. And so I gave it to him. He starts spraying it. And he messages me and he goes, what color did you want this bike? And I was like, well, it's supposed to be this. I sent him the like paint swatch. Yeah. And I was like, it's supposed to be like this deep blue. He's like, this is green as fuck. He's like, it's green, man. It's really green. And I was like, really? And he's like, sends me a picture and it's green. Wow. Like deep forest green in the light. In direct sunlight, the bike is forest green. Yeah. Under low light, it looks real dark blue. It's got a real cool like blue flop to it. Mm-hmm. And then under like no light, it looks black. Like it's a really cool color. Wow. And but it was one of those little things that I was like, that's the color for the bike. Cause like it was like Danny was like, yeah, this is green, man. Right, we're gonna paint it green. That's cool. And so cool. After that, I really kind of wanted to finish it out because we had lost him, and I was kind of like at the beginning of the build, and my wife and I talked about whether or not I was going to finish it. She was just like, I'd really like you to sell that thing. Mm. And like, because she was like, please don't ride anymore. You had your close call with it. I lost my brother riding. Mm. Like, please don't. And I was like contemplating it. And after a while, she was like, no, I want you to finish it. And I want you to kind of finish it for Danny. Wow. And I was like, hell yeah. And so I had lost my uncle a while ago. He had an aneurysm when he was on his anniversary in Mexico, rode religiously. Mm-hmm. And like losing Jeff was pretty rough for my family. Yeah. But he rode all the time. And so I was like, this will be a cool tribute bike. I'm going to have Jeremy Peterson of Relic. I've chatted with him about kind of doing some like, I want to put like for Danny and Jeff on there or something, nice. something to kind of carry them with me, which
That's
is
awesome.
kind of a trip. Thinking back on it, I forgot to say when we were going over my accident, one of the first things that I remember when I woke up actually was like, I can't explain it, but I woke up and the first two people that I thought of weren't my wife and my kid. They were immediately next.
Sure.
But was my grandpa, who passed like a few years prior, and Jeff, my uncle. And I think they were with me that day that I crashed. I really do. Because that unexplicably, those were the first two people that I thought of. And then I was immediately, my wife and kiddo were there, and immediately then I was like, oh my God. That's where my attention went from there. But it was just a really inexplicable kind of thing. But so then I was like, I want to do something to kind of remember them by. And so then it kind of turned into a cool memory bike.
Yeah.
And then when I was trying to figure out how to do this battery box. And so it has no way to mount the top of it. And so I was thinking, and then I realized I still have my dog Blake's collar. It's a leather collar. And so that leather strap that goes over there is my Blake's collar that I was cool. There you go.
Right on.
He'll ride with me.
Yeah.
So
it's
cool. Got a lot of people that I love kind of wrapped up in it, I think. So
sounds to me like it's a totem in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. I believe that wholeheartedly, man. It's something that I never really expected it to kind of go that way. But now it's I'm really happy that I was able to kind of put it together. Mm-hmm. I had this vision for it that I was really strict about getting to. Knew I wanted to wanted pretty even pipes through it. So they're pretty what do they call that? It's tuned. Mm-hmm. When all the header lengths are equal tuned head. And so I was I wanted it to be pretty similar because a lot of times you see a pretty short rear one and a real long front one. Mm-hmm. And it gives it kind of an uneven chop, when you listen to it. But I was I really want to just have it so it's and it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I like how it runs.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So when it does run, I mean, they call them Shovelheads for a reason.
Yeah, that's
so
right, man.
that was a nickname that I heard a couple old bikers give, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty fitting, man. Because if it's not one thing, it's another. Because literally yesterday, as I was hell yeah, I got the carb all rejetted, and I'm it's going to be good. I should be able to ride it to the podcast tomorrow. Super hyped about it, right? Because I was I'm going to ride it into some road. It's going to be great.
Yeah, man.
And it's super funny because I rode it down the road. My buddy works at the landfill in Casson, and I rode it down to the landfill, and he's always giving me shit over this thing being stuck up on a trailer or a lift. He's he calls it a Hardly because it hardly runs, right? So he was working at the landfill. I pull into the landfill to talk shit. He's loading a semi, so I can't talk to him. I was all right, I'll come back later. Pull out of the landfill, and then I decide whether I'm going left home or right to make a loop. Decide to go right. Head down right, and then going down the road, I just about get to the end of 8th Avenue, which is a T intersection. And I hit the brake, and the rear wheel just goes, BAM! And I'm what the hell? Get off the bike, trying to figure out what happened. All 5 bolts. I didn't put treated bolts on the rear sprocker. And I had ridden it a bunch, never had an issue, but one of those bolts came out, lodged between the sprocket and it was, I was you gotta be kidding me.
This happened literally yesterday.
This happened last night. Yeah, at 6 o'clock at night. I actually got it back home, put it up on blocks, ripped the rear wheel out, got it out, and then I realized that all 5 bolts sheared off because it's actually a front wheel. Okay. And I was well, I mean, the bolts that are there to stop it should be adequate. Yeah. They are not. Because the torque back and forth probably didn't do it any good. So what I ended up doing, I ended up drilling I ended up drilling it out and then, tapping it so that way I could put the right bolts in it. And now it's running good again.
Grade 5, grade 8, something like hardened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The ones that the sprocket came with. The things that you're supposed to run in it.
10-4. Yeah.
It's like, but again, it's like, it's one of those things, man. Safety third and chopper shit. It's just like, do it a little sketchy or don't do it at all.
Yep. That's
and
right.
so that being said, I'm going to give this thing a whole nut and bolt.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to replace the rear wheel and redo it just because currently there's 3 bolts in it and 2 drill bits.
That was going to be one of my questions is what are the future plans for it?
It's
That's one of them.
definitely getting a new rear wheel. And then after that, I have to redo the fender because, again, going back to what we talked about earlier about why don't they put 18s on a Shovelhead? Yeah. I also squatted it, which is one of the reasons that it did it. But I was running the chain, and I wanted to run as much chain or as least chain as I could. So that way, as the chain stretches, I got plenty of give.
Okay.
So I rode it pretty tight to the front.
Okay.
Which was a mistake with an 18 because I sat on the bike when I was coming here the first time and we were going down 8th and my buddy Beaver, who's coming with me, he's on his bike behind me. And we get up to that T intersection, the same one that I locked it up at. And he's like, "You're smoking bad when you brake, man. Is something rubbing? I'm smelling rubber." And I'm like, "I don't think so." I get off the bike. I don't see anything. Right. I'm like, but I smell it. And I'm just like, I don't know what the hell it is. I'm checking the belt, checking all this thing. And I'm like, I don't think so, man. And then we go up Manorville Avenue. And as we're going up Manorville Avenue, it's just smoking all the way up. Then we get to the top and he honks his horn. He's like, "Dude, something's smoking." And I get off the bike and I look and immediately I see the rear fender who Brendan did such a good job painting. He did such a good, it was like a mirror, beautiful paint job. Bubbling. Just blah, 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 and I pull the seat off of it and it comes off like melted string cheese. It's just all melted to the back of the seat that Nick just recovered. And I was like, "You gotta be kidding me." And so I was like, I gotta get it home. I gotta figure it out. I had rebuilt the shocks that day. Got it home, realized I didn't preload the shocks like a dum-dum. So
the suspension was bottoming out. The tire was rubbing on the inside of the fender.
Yep, and it wore
bubbling the paint off.
4 beautiful holes in the fender. So again, me and rear fenders, man. I just think that I'm almost dedicated to just not running a rear fender. I'll get wet and I'll get muddy, but hey, they don't fall off and they don't make the tire rub if it's not there.
Man, now we know what to get you for Christmas.
Fenders,
fenders, and nylon nylock nuts, and
every bolt on this thing has nylock on it. I was diligent about that. I was like, not a bolt on this thing does not have a nylock. Even the axle has nylocks on it.
Smart.
Because I was like, nope, it's got thread lock and nylock. And they're a mother to get off. Mm-hmm. They suck. Yeah. So I ended up having to take the transmission out not that long ago, and that was a deal. I was like, please don't break the freaking bolts. I really don't want to have to buy a new 4-speed case and rebuild a 4-speed ratchet top. But yeah, there's tons of stuff but there's other things. I mean, there's tons of crap that I got with this thing that were amazing. The motor, for instance, this will be quick, but the motor, I was like, I'm not going to get into a Shovelhead unless I have $3,000 or more, usually, right? Because I found a few of motors online, and I found a whole bottom end, didn't even have heads on it. Guy wanted $2,500 for it, and it was a cone shovel. Oof. And I was like, because they're kind of hot commodities right now. People are getting into them. I got into them. I was like, I'll be honest. I was like, yeah, I'd like to run kind of a vintage motorcycle or a vintage Harley.
Cool.
I'm on Marketplace, which is the devil's playground for me. Right? I'm looking on Marketplace, and all of a sudden, a motor comes up in a Noka. $750 he has on it. And I'm like, he's missing a zero with that.
Yeah.
It's got S&S heads on it. I'm like, no way. So I messaged him immediately. Literally, I saw it like populate. Like within it was on there for 5 minutes.
Wow.
So I messaged him, and I'm like, is that a typo, or you really want $750? Because if you want $750 for that thing, I will drive up right now. It was 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, I'll make the 2.5 hour drive to Anoka for that. He's like, no, just meet me at my house at 8 o'clock in the morning. I was like, done. I was at his front door at 7:30. Like,
Yeah.
And I messaged him too, and I was like, here's the deal. I don't need, because I had a primary and a 5-speed. I was like, I don't need the 5-speed. I had already had the 4-speed, and I already had the primary, so I didn't need it. So I messaged him. I was like, I just need the motor. He's like, $650. It's yours. And I was like, is this thing stolen?
Yeah.
He's like, no. He's like, no, it's not. And he assured me it wasn't. He showed me the title and all the work, and I was like, all right, man, I believe you.
Dude. And
so I get up there. He doesn't have the primary or the transmission off of the motor. So I was like, well, let's get this thing off and I'll take it. And he's just like, just take the fucking thing, man.
Wow.
$650. It was like, holy crap. So I was like, well, maybe it's junk, right? Because I was like, we got to tear into it. I like scoped the cylinders. The cylinders look good. And then the only thing that I found, which was probably just from him having it sit, was the exhaust push rod had been collapsed. That's it. But all the other push rods were down. They weren't like, didn't have load on them. Yeah. And the exhaust was collapsed. So I had to just redo that. And then I have a video of it. My buddy Beaver was with me the first day that I kicked it. And I prime kicked it twice. And the third kick, turned the key on, fired like it never missed a beat. Wow. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's like, it runs magnificently.
Wow. That's
and
awesome.
So when it does work, again, I'm having carb issues and stuff
carb.
now, but I got to do some stuff with that. But then, so that was the motor. And then the transmission, I thought, was another really cool story. I found that on Marketplace again. And this guy had it up there. He had wanted it for $1,200. It's a true 1960s panhead 4-speed ratchet top. Wow. And he had a hydraulic clutch on there, which I didn't really want to run. But he was an L4 Stero. And they're like one of the oldest biker clubs in the States. And so I was like, he wanted $1,200 for it. And I was like, I don't have $1,200 right now, but is there anything that you would trade up for it? And he's just like, well, I see you're a tattoo artist. Would you design us a club shirt? And I was like, yeah. I was like, what do you want? So I drew him up a club meat shirt, and he was like, $750 in that club shirt design, and it's yours, man. And I was like, dope.
Solid.
And so I drove up, traded him the design and the $750 cash, and I had a 4-speed, which I was really adamant about putting in this. I was like debating on whether or not I wanted to put a 5-speed. I was like, I want it to be a kick only 4-speed ratchet top, not a cow pie. I wanted a 4-speed ratchet top.
That's so cool.
And I was like, so it is a kick only bike. That's how it starts.
That's hardcore, dude.
Yeah, I was like, that was another thing that I was adamant about this bike with. I was like, it's got to be a kickstart only.
That's
very
cool.
I don't want it to have any. So that's why, I wanted it to be as bare bones as possible.
Yeah.
It's got like 4 wires on the whole bike.
That's awesome.
So I was like,
awesome.
no bullshit. Nothing that it doesn't need. Anything that it doesn't need isn't there. So
love it. It's hardcore. I love the brass pedal for the kicker.
Yeah, that was born out of like. So I have a couple little brass accents here and there. Like I found this one, that little brass washer there, and then the enricher or the enrichment tube off of the carb to start it.
Sure.
That was a brass one that I got from Lowbrow, and then I have little brass pins that hold the tanks on and stuff too. Yeah. And then one of my favorite parts of the bike, I don't know if you saw it, but on the other side next to the shifter, there's a little Coca-Cola brass bottle opener.
Did see
that I have mounted to right below the shock mount.
Yeah.
And that's a cool story because I got that from my buddy Chris, and they were redoing Ride Your Bike Shop in Austin. If you've never been, go. Because they have one of the coolest vintage bicycle like collections. They have like a couple old Monarch Silver Kings and like really, really rare bikes. They have a bunch of them that they hang from the rafters. It's a beautiful spot, and the guys that work there are great. But they were redoing that. They were like renovating it, and while they were renovating it, they pulled a wall down, and that brass bottle opener was stuck on the wall.
Whoa!
And he was like, "Can I have that?" And I'm like, "Sure." And he had it, and I got it off of him. And I was like, "Dude, can I have that thing?"
That's
and
awesome.
I mounted it actually on one of my bicycles a while ago, and then I had it, and it was just kicking around my shop. I was like, "That's going on in this
That
thing."
belongs on.
Because,
Like,
again, you know,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
just, and so that's where that came from. It's got a couple little things here and there that I'm like really proud of, but
yeah.
it's my baby.
It's awesome. It's definitely your personality. I mean, you put your soul into this.
Oh
thing.
yeah, I
man.
believe that heart. Yeah, I think that it's a wonderful thing to kind of like. There's a word for it. I don't know what it is. I don't remember. I used to know, but there's a word for it when you like work on something, like you imbue a good part of your soul into like what you work on.
Absolutely.
And like I think I put a whole lot of soul into this bike because I've been working on it for 3 years, and I'm really proud of the outcome of it. It's pretty dope. It rips and like again when it does.
Well, you and this bike have some awesome stories.
Yeah, it's got a lot of stories too.
I love it, man.
But that's the other thing that I love about old stuff. You know, you like
that's right.
you ride it, you enjoy it. Normally, you have to work on it. It's like an old gun. You know, it's like an old blued gun. Like you gotta treat it, and you gotta like work on it, and you gotta use it in order for it to operate correctly.
That's right.
You know, and that's kind of the heart and soul of this bike. Is where I was like, I want it to be something that I gotta like work on, and like it's not gonna always run, but I get to tinker with it. And tinkering, I gotta tinker. Like my wife knows it. She's like, you gotta have something to work on, man.
That's awesome.
So,
some guys want, fuel injection. They want to just hit the key and
for
and
sure
just go. They don't want to plan on having any problems or issues. But
no,
that's not your style. That's not who you are.
I thrive on the problems, honestly. Like I think that the story is better when you have things that go wrong, and also like it's a better way to like keep a good positive mindset. If you got shit going wrong all the time, then like chances are you're going to be able to get through some stuff. But if you got everything like push button ready, where's the fun in that? You know, like I never understood that mentality. And so like I like things being a little rougher, and I like things being like not perfect, but it'll get you down the road, and it'll tell you, like you'll have some stories by the time you're done with it. That's
really cool.
Pretty much what I want.
Absolutely.
Like I don't want to be able to just be like hop in something and be like.
Well, and you're not carrying around tools or spare parts with you on this thing.
Not
man.
yet. No, I am gonna be putting like a tool roll together with like jets, points, little things, fuses, and everything like that. I've got a list already going of stuff that like, because again, like as it come together, I don't have an R&D department. Nope. I'm the R&D department. So anytime something breaks, I'm like, all right, well, that's another thing to put in the tool belt. And so I do end up wanting to put like, I'll probably have Nick, my buddy Nick, who did the leather. He's part of Relic too.
Cool.
They're great guys, Jeremy and Nick. But I'm going to ask him to probably put me together like a tool roll or something, because he's really good with leather work and everything. So
very cool.
I might have him. He probably doesn't know. He's like, God damn it, man. Just make it. He'll watch this and be like, James, fucking learn it. Do it yourself,
Guess
dude.
we're doing that.
Because he's got a good workload on him already. So
very cool.
But yeah, it needs a tool roll for sure.
Awesome.
Maybe it'll cover that bubbled up part of the fender. I'll make a little mount for it on the back of that. Maybe I don't need a new fender, because now that it doesn't rub, I mean,
working the bugs out.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's another thing too. As I have the bike, I'm very happy with how the bike looks and everything like that. I don't expect it to look like this forever. Like, and again, it's still not even really finished, because it's got like, I got to polish the nacelle. I got to do a couple things with it to make it like, if I want to finish it, we'll get it to that point. But like, I'm a really big patina guy.
Cool.
Because it tells a story of like where the bike's been.
Yeah.
And like, sure, we rub paint off the rear fender. Shit. darn.
Yeah.
You know, I can respray it and do it, make it look all perfect again and everything like that. Or it can have a scar for a bit and have a story again. You know? And as I get little rock chips in it, I'm sure Brandon's going to watch this and be like, I swear to God. But that being said, I believe in, like, again, it's kind of imbuing part of your soul into that. And like part of that is like the story behind like, where did this rock chip come from?
That's right.
I don't think there's anything that I like dislike more, just me, my style, than like fake patina.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big part of me that wants to really like rail against that. But again, that's not my thing.
Sure.
That's their thing.
Yeah.
And they like it and everything like that. But if it doesn't have like an authentic story behind it, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Like you're just you're doing a thing where you're like, it's real cool. It's not actually a farm truck.
Yeah.
It's not actually like this. It didn't actually sunbake for 30 or 40 years or something.
Yeah. That's
You
right.
know, and I didn't pull it out of a field. I roughed it up with sandpaper. And there's an art to that too.
Well, sure.
But I'm like, dude, real patina is earned. And it's like, it's the story of that vehicle.
That's right.
And I love that. And as this ages and it gets rust here and there and it gets nicks and scrapes and stuff like that, I can't wait. Like,
That's cool.
You know, I see a lot of guys, they age their paint, especially on like vintage bikes. But I'm like, I'll run the bright tanks on this thing and they'll look great while they look great.
Mm-hmm.
But as I spill gas and oil on it and as it eats up the paint and as it flakes and cracks and stuff like that, I'll wear those too. You know, I'll love it.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And like, there's part of me that definitely is like, speed it up, but I don't want to do that because it's manufacturing a story versus like living a story. And there's a big difference between the two.
Yeah.
You know,
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, man, I love that you shared so many of the stories of the pieces that go with this bike. That's awesome, man. That's
Dude,
so cool.
I got a lot.
I love it.
I got some other projects, so hopefully I'll be able to come back and
we'll
show
get you
guys
back,
those.
with one of your next projects. But
hell yeah, I got a couple bike builds, and then I've got a rat rod project that I'd like to get going, and then I've Brendan, the guy that painted the bike, was generous enough to give me a 1953 Ford F100 that I'm building right now.
Dude,
I cannot wait to show you guys that because we're like hammered down on that thing right now.
To see it.
I've got the Lego set. I just need to put it together.
Dude, that's awesome. Well, we will definitely have you back on.
Hell yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Did we forget anything?
I don't think so.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Nick,
what do you
we got
think,
anything?
Nick?
No?
We're good?
Doing good?
Think
Awesome.
we covered it?
James, thanks
Hell
for
yeah.
coming on the podcast,
Hell,
man.
thanks for having me, man.
We love sharing with you guys the people and the builds, and this is how we keep hot rodding and bike building and custom culture alive, is guys just like James. And so thanks for joining us, and we will catch you next week with another awesome build. Peace and grace.